Welcome everybody to the Coast to Coast podcast. My name is Griffin. Welcome in. I am joined by our illustrious host Liam. How are you doing?
We're doing well, doing well. Getting ready to watch some more basketball here. Are they going to choke it? I don't know if I can handle that in my group chat. I got a lot of Boston buddies. Uh, I might actually have to delete my phone.
Yeah, Boston fans are super annoying. I hate to be the one to say, if you're a Boston fan, you guys are so privileged, bro. But anyways, we are gonna jump into our mock draft 1.0. Gonna be discussing mostly the lottery today, but we will have. I think we'll go through our entire first round mock today, and break that stuff down. And we'll put this all up on socials later, so you can, check out the full list in picture format. But today, I think we just start off straight from the top. I think this is the general consensus number one, basically for everybody in the NBA draft community, and that's Victor Wembanyama going to the San Antonio Spurs. I don't know if we have a whole lot to say on that, just because he's a generational prospect. Maybe not as much as the guys on ESPN have been saying, like the best draft prospect ever, but he's up there. So yeah, Victor Wembanyama. I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, the Spurs need to be aggressive and actually going to spend money this offseason and trying to get, some foundation guys around them. I know
Hmm.
Austin Reeves is the name that's been thrown out. Perhaps a team like Phoenix looking to unload on a Chris Paul contract to bring in a veteran point guard. I think that's what they need to do. They're not going to win year one with Wembanyama. It's going to be about his third year when you can really, go at it with him because, you know, he's got the shot making abilities. His efficiency hasn't been great in terms of three. I imagine, he'll see his struggles shooting wise. I think in the 32 range in terms of 3-point percentage, but, he's a dominant defensive prospect. They won the lottery. No doubts about that. They got Tim Duncan, in 1997, or yeah, 97, I think. And then David
Hmm.
Robinson before that, they got their twin towers over there. And then now they get the next best big man prospect, probably since Tim Duncan, as far as I know. Um, you know, because Dwight Howard wasn't in that ring.
Yeah.
Wemby is so interesting to see. I really hope that Pop, kind of gives him some creative freedom, especially with the team that, the culture is, really fundamental basketball. And it's good that, Manu, Tony Parker, and Tim Duncan are going to be mentoring him through this process. So, yeah, Wemby number one. No one's going to debate
Yeah,
it.
fairly easily. And just jumping off something you said and kind of disagreeing, I do think that the Spurs will try to compete with this team early on, and I think they could be like a Fred Van Vliet possible location. Just because I think they want to maybe maximize Pop, because he's even though he's coming back this year and he probably will be the first for the foreseeable future, he is still the oldest coach in the league, kind of by far. So. I see them kind of doing that. But moving on to number two, we have Charlotte, and this is kind of where the draft starts in my opinion. I think in Liam's opinion as well, and I think the general consensus is that well because Charlotte has a big decision to make. But Liam, take it away. Who do you have the Coast to Coast podcast selecting in our mock draft?
Yeah, I think you got to take Scoot Henderson. I mean, in any other draft, this guy's going number one. There's a lot of talk of, how you're going to put two guards, ball dominant guards next to each other. But you got to know that, like, LaMelo Ball is a great shooter, has shot a lot of threes in his career, hasn't been, extremely healthy as of late, but, all star, all NBA potential guy, going alongside Scoot, in the process of developing his jumper and, kind of looking at the contrast of this pick, going Brandon Miller. I think it's a little bit of an exaggeration saying it's a LaMelo Ball, James Wiseman type of mistake that could be made because I'm personally very high on Brandon Miller. I think a wing that can, stuff the stat sheet. Those are guys that, lead you to the promised land. Think of a guy like, LeBron James, for example, Jason Tatum, what he's doing now. If you can rebound, you can, play make and you can score, like you're going to be a very high valued wing in this league. But, the edge does go to Scoot. You know, if they're worried about, character concerns with whatever happened with Brandon Miller, Scoot's the guy to go with. And, people may say, talk about stats and that stuff like that, but the way I see it is the G League isn't really, a place where you're going to see people put up, crazy stats along the lines of that. But, it was a developmental process, being able to go against NBA talent that you don't really see in the NCAA and some international leagues. So give me Scoot Henderson. I think that's something that we've agreed upon.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with that, Liam. Just considering, I think, Brandon Miller, considering they've had another issue with another wing in Miles Bridges, and it seems like they are bringing them back. I don't know character-wise how that might play out in Charlotte. And I think, when you're a team like Charlotte where you don't have that much going for you, you take the best prospect available and just try to make it work. I think LaMelo can play off the ball, like you said. And I think, concerning, like maybe his G League stats weren't as impressive this year as they were last year. I think, he cemented himself as bare minimum a top three lottery pick in the draft and kind of coasted. And I think that that's reasonable to expect with a guy like that. So I completely agree. I think Scoot's the pick here, and I don't think you think twice about it. But moving on, the guy you mentioned before when talking about the kind of the 2A and 2B of this class is Brandon Miller. And we have him going number 3 to Portland. This is barring no trades happening because Portland is definitely one of the premier teams looking to maybe move down in this draft to try to gain some assets to bring around Dame. What do you think, barring any trade, what do you think Brandon Miller brings to Portland?
Yeah, I think at this point, I mean, we've seen a lot from Shaden Sharp that, he can be a potential future in this franchise. And, what we've seen from Anthony Simons as well. I think when it comes to Brandon Miller, he slots in perfectly to that team that I feel like ever since Damian Lillard has been a Portland Trailblazer, they've been kind of lacking, production at the three. And, when it comes to the topic of trading this pick, I truly think it'd be a mistake. I don't think Portland's in a position to, compete where they're at. I think there's a lot of question marks at the center position. Jusuf Nurkic, when he came over from the Nuggets, was fantastic, but kind of ever since the last couple of seasons, he's been very injury prone and, hasn't been able to be on the court for them. And regardless of how great he's been when he's on the court, availability is, one of the biggest things in terms of NBA. Likewise, I think it's just due diligence that they owe Damian Lillard to send him to the, destination where he can win, a different situation than Portland. And I think if you have a young nucleus with Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp, Brandon Miller, hopefully you're able to get, at least a late lottery selection for Damian Lillard, in this draft. You can truly have a great roster going forward because the West is stacked. I think there's a lot of teams that are continue on the rise, and I think Portland just needs to keep that pick and, potentially acquire another one in this draft. But who knows?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think kind of the mindset that Portland at least has been reported, I think is kind of I don't agree with it at all considering Dame is almost in his late 30s now. Like how much longer do you think this is going to go on for? And I think just for both sides, if Damian Lillard really wants to win a championship, he's not going to do that in Portland. Guys like Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp, and Brandon Miller aren't going to be at the level that Damian Lillard would need them to be at in order to make a deep playoff run like he wants to do. And I think if you just gather more and more assets, you draft Brandon Miller, you build towards the future. You have a nice young core with Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp, and Brandon Miller. I think that's the move, as opposed to trading the 3 pick to try to get someone maybe more established in the league. But moving on to the Rockets at number 4. We have Anthony Black being taken here. Liam, walk me through that thought process.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people have, a Men Thompson.
Yeah, sorry, folks. Internet died.
Awesome. So a guy, in Anthony Black, that both of us are very high on. I think one of the things that you see talked about a lot is, guys being played off the court in playoff games when they aren't able to shoot. I mean, look at the trajectory of a guy like Bruce Brown, shout out to you, a guy that wasn't able to shoot, but, saw success, now being able to shoot with Jokic in that offense is extremely valuable. And while Anthony Black, is far from a good shooter at all, I think he's at least a step above Amen Thompson. And, this new team, not a new team, but kind of a new idea with Ime Udoka, coming into Houston. I think Anthony Black fits perfectly in that lineup if you're running Black at the 1, Jalen Green at the 2, Jabari Smith at the 3, Tari Eason at the 4, and Alperen Sengun at the 5. I honestly think if, Ime Udoka is able to bring that, what he was able to bring in Boston, before his dismissal into Houston, this is a team that I think could be a sneaky play at a 10 seed. That Sengun's got all-star potential. Jalen Green's a guy that can score 23 points a game. I love what Tari Eason does on the defensive end, and as well as the offense. And, Jabari Smith was rightfully so a top 3 pick. I think Anthony Black is going to be the facilitator that this team needs, because that's the one thing that's, while good Jalen Green, he's not really going to be that primary ball handler for you. You need a guy that can play make for others. And, Anthony Black is also fantastic on the defensive end. And if, Jalen Green is your one weak spot in that team in terms of defense, that's fine. While, Amen Thompson, is a superior defensive prospect, I think I like what I've seen from Anthony Black. And, the uncertainty of the Thompson twins, I think, will be something that we'll talk about throughout this draft. Whether one of them drops or not, that will be seen.
Yeah, I completely agree with that because on my personal big board, Anthony Black is my fourth highest rated player. And I think it's for all the reasons you just mentioned, being a much not better facilitator, but also being able to facilitate while also being good in the half court offense, I think is going to be key. And especially, I think for a team that doesn't have the brightest prospects for the future, like the Rockets do have. I think maybe Anthony Black is the safer pick here. Just to bring a more we have voiced our concerns on the Thompson twins multiple times regarding the half court offense, 3-point ability, and their level of competition in overtime elite. And I think Anthony Black is just a more proven player, and I understand your rationale behind that. But yeah, moving on to number 5, we got Detroit here on the clock. What do we got?
Yeah, I think, this was a team that would have loved to land, in that top 3 and be able to select Brandon Miller. But, they're going to go with the next best wing available, and they're going to take Cam Whitmore out of Nova. A guy that, committed to Villanova, and then to a surprise, Jay Wright announced his retirement. A guy who's been key, in the development of some of the best, NBA players in this league, whether it be Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, you name it. A lot of those guys, developed, the core principles that have helped lead them to be, key contributors in this league. And with Cam Whitmore, I think, a lot of his weaknesses were put on display given the fact he played on a poor Villanova team that, failed to qualify for the NCAA tournament. A lot of problems in terms of, failing to, make the right pass at times, or failing to pass at all, kind of the Michael Porter Jr. Mentality. But, I think, the physical tools of him are excellent, has some ability to create his own shot, which is, something people need because, looking at the Miami Heat, I think a big reason for their struggles in these last, couple of games leading into this game 7 have been, outside of Jimmy Butler, there's not a lot of offensive creation on this team. Sure, like Martin's been playing well, but, that's a lot of, catch and shoot, just going to the rack. Gabe Vincent's fine, but, when you want to win, championships in this league, you need to have, elite shot creators and elite shot makers on this team. I think, Cam Whitmore, he's not going to be asked, to be a major ball handler in this offense, with Cade Cunningham returning from injury and Jaden Ivey being one of the more impressive rookies last season. I think Detroit's trending in the right direction. Got to figure out what the situation is with their front court because their power forward and center positions are very interesting. But I expect Durant is going to be the guy going forward at the 5. Who knows that mix of bigs they have will be at the 4. I know Bogdanovich is on the roster, but he could be a guy that's looked to be moved this offseason if they want to go in a more younger direction.
Yeah, for sure. Really disappointing for Pistons fans, and I feel them. But I think this is definitely the right pick here. Kind of like maybe a plussed up Shadiq Bey that they've had in the past couple of years, pairing Cam Whitmore with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. I like the pick there. Moving on to number 6 in this mock draft, we have the Orlando Magic taking Asar Thompson. Liam, break us down why Asar over Amen, because Amen seems like the consensus, uh, at least in terms of the draft experts that we've been viewing and listening to and watching and all that sort of stuff. Have seemed to have been the better of the Thompson twins. Why is Asar better for the Magic than Amen?
Yeah, I think taking a step back, I mean, honestly, Amen is, seen as a superior prospect and due to, his elite level athleticism, probably one of the more athletic prospects we've seen probably in the last 2 decades, since the 2000s. And then, doesn't really, he's also a very good playmaker as well. But I think Asar fits perfectly in this team. You know, it seems like they're trending in the direction that, whether it be Markel Fultz stays there or Jalen Suggs is able to get over this hump that he's been in his career. The one position is kind of loaded. Also Cole Anthony is there as well. And a guy in Amen Thompson is kind of fit to be a point guard in this league. Doesn't really have, the shooting ability to be a two guard. And I think Asar Thompson fits perfectly for this team. He is the superior defensive prospect of the brothers. And, during his last couple stretch at OTE showed some great flashes as being a shooter. I don't think he's going to be a great shooter coming into it, but we'll get later in this draft where they'll address that problem. I think if he slides in at the 2, they got a lot of, height and versatility on this team. Assuming a roster looks along the sides of Markel Fultz running at the 1, you got Asar Thompson at the 2, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, and Wendell Carter Jr. with a plethora of other options coming off the bench. I think this Orlando Magic team is looking, to make a run for it. Paolo was very inefficient last season, but, showed some great signs, still scored 20 points a game. And I think Franz Wagner is one of the most underrated players in the league for his ability, to create and as an offensive threat. So I got Asar Thompson for those reasons. I think he fits in perfectly to this roster.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think that's sound logic, Liam. I think that's an excellent point you made. Moving on, number 7, we have the Indiana Pacers. And this is kind of where Liam and I kind of diverge a little bit in regards to who they have picking here. But overall, I think we kind of landed on 2 players. But we have Jarris Walker as of now at number 7. Um, and I think that's an excellent pick. But also, I think Taylor Hendricks could be the guy here, just because it's clear to me that Indiana needs a 4. Break down why Jarris Walker was the guy for you, Liam.
Yeah, so I think when it comes down to it, the position to address is the power forward position. While Miles Turner has been a guy that's been in trade rumors his entire career, it seems that he might stay on this roster given the trajectory. But look at the 4 position. They added Jalen Smith last season. As good as he may be, he's not really a starting caliber player in this
He's an
league.
all-star caliber player.
I think adding Jarris Walker is perfect for them. A guy that can defend, has shown some passing ability, a little bit of a jump shot, kind of has a whole arsenal of skills in his tool bag. And I think adding that to this team, allows to do a variety of pick and pop, pick and roll situations with Tyrese Halliburton, one of the best playmakers, in this league. And, whether, Buddy Hield stays, they still have guys like Chris Duarte, Ben Matherin, who was fantastic to start last year's rookie season. I think adding Jarris Walker to this roster is the perfect fit. But I totally understand the opinion for Taylor Hendricks. But I like that we were able to see a lot of Walker. Despite them going down to the Hurricanes in the NCAA tournament, we still saw a lot of potential from him. Playing on a very high level Houston team.
So yeah, at number 8, moving on, we have Amen Thompson dropping all the way towards the Wizards, and I think the Wizards fans would be ecstatic if this happened, just because Johnny Davis was sort of disappointing as a rookie, and I think this is kind of the guy that could kickstart a Wizards rebuild with all the potential that he has. Break down why he's great for the Wizards.
Yeah, I think kind of, if it's not Amen Thompson, they need to take a pick to swing for the fences. This
Hmm.
has been one of the most disappointing teams ever since the departure of John Wall. The Wizards, Bradley Beal is now, entered the stage where his contract extension that he received, he is far below the value of what his contract is. We saw a great season, from Kyle Kuzma and as well as Kristaps Porzingis, both putting up career highs. But who knows if those guys stay? I believe Kyle Kuzma is going to enter this offseason as a potential free agent. If not, I know that he's probably going to be
I
the
think
guy.
he's restricted.
But we'll see, if they end up matching
I'm
that.
not sure.
This is a team that also has a weird, collection of wings. Corey Kispert's a guy that they took out of Gonzaga, I believe 2 years ago. He's shown some ability, but he's much of a role player in this league. And, the foreign prospect, Danny Avdija, that they took a couple years back, still hasn't broken out. And at this point, might start to write that off a little bit as a miss of a pick. Like you mentioned, Johnny Davis last season, really only came about at the end of the year when they kind of shut down Bradley Beal and started playing him some minutes, but still a disappointing pick. But Men Thompson has, all the tools that they possibly need. Putting him at the 1 doesn't really conflict with anything they have on their roster. And, with the high level athleticism, if they're going to be a team that can give him the time to develop, he could become, an all NBA player in this league. I think it's a perfect situation for Thompson to land in.
Completely agree. Moving on, Utah Jazz at 9. We have them taking Keontae George out of Baylor. Liam, why is Keontae George a great fit in Utah?
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, they're going to need a guard on this roster. Whether they take George, Nick Smith, Cason Wallace, a variety of guards available at this range in the draft. I think with Keontae George, he gives you that shot making ability to be able to complement Markkanen and Walker Kessler. A guy that doesn't get regarded a lot is a good defender. Is very active in the lanes, can get steals. A lot of people like to pin on the Jamal Murray tag on him. If he's anything like Jamal Murray, that'd be amazing. A guy who just averaged 32 and a half points in Denver making the NBA Finals. So we will see, a team that's been kind of up and down this past season, since the departure of Donovan Mitchell at the guard position. Moved on Mike Conley. I ended up getting in that trade, Russell Westbrook getting waived, all that kind of stuff. Jordan Clarkson, has a player option. I expect him to opt out and look to, go to a team where he can be a big contributor for a winning team. Who knows about Colin Sexton on this roster? I didn't really get the playing time I expected him to this season, but I think with Keontae George, he has upside to be, an 18-plus point per game scorer. And, even if, Markkanen isn't in the future, I think having a core, of Walker Kessler and Keontae George would be great because this team we thought would be finishing a lot lower, higher in this lottery, but they land where they do at number 9. I think Keontae George is a good upside pick, a guy that hopefully you can fix, some of his problems that we saw at display on Baylor, a lot of his turnover issues, but turn out to be a really good pick for them.
Yeah. Moving on, we have number 10, the Dallas Mavericks. We had them taking Taylor Hendricks, and I think this would be a perfect fit in Dallas. Taylor Hendricks is probably one of my best or my favorite players in this entire draft. Just a great 3-and-D prospect. Liam, break down why he would be great in Dallas, even though Griffin would personally hate it.
Well, I mean, this is a match made in heaven for Dallas, a team that really struggled on the defensive end. Likely you're going to see when you have Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic running out there for 35 plus minutes per game. Christian Wood not being the guy, at center that can defend the rim, really just an offensive guy, nothing really else out there. You add a guy in Taylor Hendricks with great two-way potential, was able to protect the rim at UCF, was kind of put on full display, on a UCF team that doesn't really see like these kind of guys come around often. Shot great from 3, was able to get to the rack, a very explosive player. I think, being able to do pick and pop, pick and rolls with Luka Doncic, he's kind of a step up of what Dorian Finney-Smith was for them, and a lot more, agile and long defensively. I don't know what his true ceiling is in this league. I don't know if he's an all-star guy, but like he's going to be impact winning immediately. Some names that, when I thought, doing comparisons for him was guys like Jared Vanderbilt, Grant Williams, but we could see him go a lot higher than that in terms of what his NBA ceiling is. But a perfect fit. And if it wasn't going to be, him here, Jarris Walker might be the guy that falls here and would be perfect for Dallas, who luckily ended up not dropping for number 10 and keeping the pick.
Excellent. I definitely agree with that, and I think maybe not the highest end that he could go, but I think like Jeremy Grant, if you could get that out of Taylor Hendricks, would just be spectacular for Dallas, and him in general in the league. But moving on, number 11, we got Orlando, taking the boy Grady Dick, giving hope for white boys everywhere. I love this pick here, just because I think Orlando, one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league last season, and Grady Dick can, torch from beyond the arc. Liam, do you want to break down any more why Grady Dick would be excel in Orlando?
No, I think, you take a guy in Asar Thompson who doesn't have, a guaranteed jump shot entering the league. He's going to struggle. You add a guy in Grady Dick who's going to, whether he's coming off the bench or starting, sparsely, I think he's going to be a great fit for this team to be able to make shots, around Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner. He's the typical role player that you want, on a contending team. And,
Hmm.
I thought there's a lot of people that have been seeing his ceiling as a lot higher. He started off very good this season at Kansas, but at the end of the day, they add, a athletic, 3-point shooting wing who needs to, adjust on defense, but they have a lot of defensive pieces on that roster. Who knows if they end up keeping, John Isaac. I know that's the decision they'll be looking at this summer, but you have, the high upside of Asar Thompson, and then you complement it with a guy with an instant high floor in Grady Dick.
Yeah, moving on, we got number 12, the Oklahoma City Thunder taking Leonard Miller out of Canada, who seems to be kind of a late riser in this draft. His name has been coming up more and more as the draft gets closer in regards to moving up in the draft. Liam, why is Leonard Miller the pick for Oklahoma City?
No, yeah, I remember when I was doing my dives into Scoot Henderson, I kept seeing like, who's this Leonard Miller guy that's like always up there in the stat sheets alongside him, and was doing some research into him. He's a guy who I don't think was able to put all on display what he wanted to this season with G League Ignite, obviously with the marquee player and Scoot Henderson playing alongside him. But this is a guy, big frame, 6'10", 6'9", around there, long wingspan. He's able to, get to the basket. He's able to rebound, has the positional versatility, to defend 3 through 5. I think this is the exact kind of player that, a team in OKC is looking to get. I've seen people talk about them potentially adding Cason Wallace, to kind of have like that 3 guard rotation. But I think what they like what they have in Trey Mann. I think that's, something that they can use, get a guy in free agency and not waste the draft pick on that. Who knows if, Usman Zhang's going to develop for them or, their long-term plans with Lou Dort despite his contract extension. But, if you're able to have, Chet out there, potentially throw in Leonard Miller at the 4, I think this is going in a great direction. This is really a luxury pick for an OKC team that, overperformed this last season and is going to, continue to develop with the young pieces on the roster because they didn't even have Chet last year and they went as far as they did. So who knows what we may see.
Yeah, I completely agree. Usman Jang, like last year, even though I did like him, we both said he was definitely a prospect or a project for Oklahoma City. And just because of the plethora of draft picks they have, they can afford to take another project with this guy who's 6'10", has a 7'2" wingspan, has some guard skills. Like, for sure, they could definitely afford to take a pick right here. And I think that's the right pick because if one of these guys hits, it's a game changer for OKC. So, for sure. Moving on, 13, we got the Raptors taking Cason Wallace. What's the mindset behind the Raptors with this pick here?
Yeah, so the impending free agency of Fred Van Vliet, it's assumed that he's going to depart from Toronto, with a big payday in mind. A guy that was key and instrumental to that championship Raptors team a couple years ago. So looking to fill the void, they add a guy in Cason Wallace who, isn't a typical great shot creator, like many point guards are nowadays, but he's a guy that's going to be very good defensively, has all NBA defense, all defensive, acumen for him. And, he's able to get shots, be able to play make. And, the last thing you want is to add a non-shooting wing to this team, especially when you have a guy like Scotty Barnes who despite him showing at times be able to hit the three, that's not his main thing. Who knows the future of guys? I believe Gary Trent is a free agent as well. And OG Anunoby has been in trade rumors the last 2 seasons. But I
Hmm.
think, if you add a guy in Casey Wallace to be, the point guard of the future for this team alongside Scotty Barnes, this Raptors team has a long climb to get back to where they were. Unfortunately, Kawhi left and this team kind of, went down the drain. But you still have Pascal Siakam. Who knows if he's moved this offseason, but that would probably bring in some more young talent. But I like, in terms of the options available, I think Casey Wallace is the guy to go with.
Yeah, completely agree. Number 14, we have Derek Lively the second, going to New Orleans. Break down this pick, Liam.
Yeah, so at first I was kind of set on the fact that they go after a guy in GG Jackson, with the health and situation of Zion Williamson, being up in the air, that they may go for a guy that they can put in at the power forward position, to replace him if Zion's not able to be out there. But, we saw a huge jump from a guy like Trey Murphy, who I was really high on coming out of the draft, as a 3-and-D wing. Seems like he's going to be in the long-term plans for that team. And, instead of adding another wing or a guard into this crowded team, I thought about, we talked earlier about Kobe Buffkin being here potentially, but I think the last thing you need is a guy that has to have the ball in his hands, or, a primary ball handler on this team. When you have CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram showed good signs as a playmaker towards the end of last
Hmm.
season, I think you add Derek Lively. Who knows the future of Jonas Valanciunas when they're going to have to start paying a lot of the other guys on their roster. I think with Derek Lively, we saw, during his, workouts and stuff, he's been showing a great ability to hit the three ball, and, wasn't exactly what people thought he would be in the season at Duke. Kind of was a slow riser in terms of what he was able to do at the end of the season. If Kyle Flipowski was in this draft, who knows who would be higher? I did have higher grade on Kyle Flipowski, but Derek Lively has shown a lot in these last couple of weeks, and especially as a defensive prospect. He's probably the best, rim protector outside of Victor Wembanyama in this class, and being able to have that just get a role guy. You just hope he's better than Jackson Hayes, because that's what Jackson Hayes was what people thought. They're thinking the same thing what people are thinking about Derek Lively, and you hope that Derek Lively still has some left in the tank. One of the top high school recruits in his class. He's able to be a good defender for this team, be able to make shots at times. That's extremely valuable as well. If you're able to step out and hit the three, it opens up room for when Zion Williamson comes back and wants to dominate in the paint. So I think this is a perfect, he's able to sit behind Jonas Valanciunas potentially for a year and really develop. And I like the pick with Derek Lively here to finish off the lottery.
Yeah, for sure. Um, do you have any of? I think we're gonna cut it off here for breaking down pick by pick. But Liam, in our mock draft, do you have any picks that kind of jump out to you as being something you're really proud of, or just love the fit for these guys on throughout the rest of the draft?
Yeah, I have Jet Howard from Michigan going at number 18 to the Miami Heat. A team that's going to be very interesting, regardless of what happens in this game 7, in terms of how they're going to, pay out these guys on their rosters. Max Strus is a guy that's going to be a free agent. Gabe Vincent's a guy that's going to be a free agent. Who knows if Miami's going to be able to lock both of them up. And, now with the luxury of the number 18 overall pick, they might say, let's keep Gabe Vincent. We can go and get, our Max Strus replacement in the 6'8" Jet Howard, son of Michigan coach Juwan Howard, a great 3-point shooter, and kind of has exactly the tools that a guy like Max Strus has, but he's a lot younger. He's going to get that rookie contract. They're not going to have to worry about paying him for a while. That's why one of my favorite picks there as well. Moving down the board, I love Chris Murray going to the Brooklyn Nets. Who knows if Brooklyn is going to bring back Cam Johnson? I'd assuming they do, given that they traded for him in that
They
Kevin
should.
Durant. But Chris Murray, similar to his brother Keegan Murray in a lot of ways. A lefty, he can shoot the three, he can play defense. Would be good to bring into that core. Alongside of Mikal Bridges, Cam Thomas, and so on and so forth. And given that Brooklyn had 2 back-to-back picks, I added Jalen Hood-Schifino, the mid-range specialist guard out of Indiana, to pair alongside him. And then some guys to keep an eye out. You know, Bilal Koulibaly, from France, played on Mets 92, if I'm correct.
No.
Uh,
Hmm.
Going to the Kings, a team that you know didn't really have a strong structure at the three position. I think a guy that can sit and develop. The Kings, they had a great season this past year. If they're able to develop him and make him, the replacement to Harrison Barnes down the road, I think that's be a great pick. And then looking down towards the bottom of the lottery, Amari Bailey's been a riser from the NBA Combine. I like seeing him in this pick here going to the Clippers. But the bottom of the draft is not official yet, given that the NBA Finals has not finished out yet. So who knows exactly with that. I also do like Colby Jones from Xavier going to the Pacers. A older guard who's able to fit in alongside Tyrese Halliburton as a secondary ball handler who can shoot the three and has some defensive abilities. But if you want to see the rest, you can check that out on social media at Coast to Coast. So links will be down below for that.
Yeah, just to wrap up a little bit, I just want to shout out my guy Kobe Buffkin. He's definitely been, I don't know, another one of my guys. I think he could maybe even be, I don't know, a Tyrese Halliburton or a Tyrese Maxey of this draft, where kind of taken later, maybe end of the lottery, early in the teens, sort of guy. But I really love him, and we have him going number 17 to the Lakers, which would be exciting. We will stay locked in on the NBA draft. We're going to hit you with some more content as the draft gets closer and closer. Uh, but yeah, follow us on socials, like the video, subscribe, do all that sort of stuff. And that's been Coast to Coast. We're gonna sign out. Peace.